There we go. Folks, welcome. You are listening to a Fireside Chat for ZineQuest month. With me, I have Craig Campbell. He has the Low Stakes Kickstarter. Craig, welcome.
Welcome. Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Here we are on Saturday morning having a fine fireside chat where I have no fire. Do you have a fire in there?
Oh, I got a virtual fire. I got the virtual fire. Yeah, it kind of, sort of, I've got the adventurer party sitting down behind me. So if you hear noise, it's either that or it's my wife's yoga class in the next room that she's doing by Zoom. Either one. I would close the door, but then we would have a cat scratching on the door constantly. So if you hear people going, it's my wife or something like that.
Gotcha.
So, Craig, you are one of the literally, I don't know if it's literally hundreds, but certainly dozens.
Oh, it's hundreds. It's hundreds.
Yeah, it is hundreds. All right.
Yeah, I think it's probably over 200. Well, it'll certainly be in the hundreds by the time the rest of the ZineQuest stuff kicks off later in the month. It's early.
I know. That's the whole thing, and it's funny because when I threw this up on the Zine RPG Zine community that Tim Schwartz put together. And I threw up the idea of I'll do some fireside chats. Reach out to me if you're interested. I've now have to over the next week and a half. I'm double booking. It's like, oh, my wife works this day until 8. I can certainly fit in at least 2 fireside chats. But the response has been really great. So now before we delve into your zine, how did you get into RPGs in the first place? How did this become either a hobby or a passion or both for you?
Well, it started for me in college. I didn't get started quite as early as some old school gamers, I guess. But my first year in college, right before the spring semester wrapped up, I had a friend in the dorms who said, "Hey, you should play this game." And it was AD&D 2nd edition. He specifically ran a Ravenloft game for me and a couple of other friends. I think he probably picked that because he knew I'm a horror movie buff and was read a lot of Stephen King and Clive Barker and stuff. So, but anyway, we played a Ravenloft game, and I had a fantastic time. And then I went home for the summer to a little town in northern Wisconsin where there was nobody gaming. But I bought the books and kind of just consumed them over the summer. And then, when I got back down to school that year and over the course of the next several years, dove headlong into D&D and then a little bit of Shadowrun. We played a fair bit of Star Wars, West End, the D6 game.
Oh, yes.
The Blue Book, well, the book before that, the 1st edition, and then the 2nd edition Blue Book. And so, yeah, we had, a whole bunch of stuff. And then World of Darkness happened, and I got involved with that with other people who were kind of into those games, and it just kind of blew up from there. And over the years, so it's been close to 30 years of playing and GMing. And then eventually I started to dip my toe into design work. And first of all, the design stuff that every GM kind of does as part of being a GM, you house rule stuff and make stuff up, but then eventually getting a chance to freelance occasionally for a company. And then that slowly ramped up as well. And here I am.
And when you write for yourself, you're writing stuff for your own campaign, for your own use, the initial process is probably similar, but to be able to write something for publication, in other words, have other people pick up your writing and not be stuck going, and by the way, we don't filter on this live stream time, not going, what the fuck? Because you know exactly where you're going to go with it, even if you don't include it into your notes because you were thinking of it. But when you're writing for publication, you've got to make sure that you include all the connections that maybe aren't intuitive to you, but aren't necessarily intuitive to the person that's picking up your material. So that's a switch that a lot of people can't make. It's not necessarily an intuitive one.
No, it's not. It's and I've found that having written for D&D and a few other game companies, that there's even a difference between like writing for them with their kind of the way they do it. Like, right, like when I wrote something for D&D 4th edition in Dragon or Dungeon magazine online, there was a certain way to kind of put it together. They kind of expected wording to be a certain way. They expected you to structure adventures a certain way. There was a template essentially for a lot of these companies. And so that helps because it helps to get you in the mindset of like, well, this is how this game presents its information. And so you try to make sure you present your information in a similar vein. But then when you go and do something on your own, like you either have to design and figure out what that template is for you. And it might change from product to product. And if you're hiring people to come in, it also becomes a question of getting them acclimated to provide information in whatever they're writing in kind of a way that will fit your style and the way you've put everything together. And it's wide open for you. Like I could write it 100 different ways. I could present the information for a game in 100 different ways. And many of them will be terrible and won't be terribly understandable, but there's a lot of ways that would be understandable. And so you just have to find the ones that kind of work for you, that you think a large percentage of the readership will be able to follow and learn the instructions, because a game manual is in part an instruction manual.
It is. And it's also a process of almost branding. The way you put those rules together, like you said, it's a template. But when you're working with writing for a Dungeon or Dragon magazine, they wanted a consistency in the way rules or adventures were presented, so it didn't feel like you're going hardly from one author to another. So you had to follow a stylistic map. And I think even when you're putting out a product, if you're building a theme, I guess, to it, that people can go, I recognize that writing style. That must be for travel. That must be for D&D. If it's coming from the company, then third party material is often different and runs a little bit astray from that. But I don't think you really consciously think about that as a consumer. But I can see why as a publisher you'd want that.
Yeah,
and want people to feel comfortable.
I've become cognizant of things that I do, even product to product, that are like, I guess you could call them the brand, part of the brand of game stuff that I design, where I don't necessarily say it the same way in every game, but like one of the things I know I tend to put into games is like, when I present the information in there for players and GMs, is underneath it all, I trust the players and the GM to fill in the blanks and to fill in the gaps, and so I don't write rule sets that describe every little thing. I don't get really deep into numbers and math. I give enough information to kind of do whatever the mechanics need to do, and then there's always a sense of like, okay, well, here's a superpower description in Capers, but it's not super detailed. It tells you basically mechanically in the world what the power does, but then you get to fill in the aesthetic of what that power looks like, and the kind of feel of it in the game. I don't necessarily over describe stuff, and right. I think that's one of the things that maybe comes through in the stuff that I design, because I just don't want to get that deep in the weeds, and I like the inherent, without saying that you're giving permission to the readers, to the players, to just be able to take it and kind of like, well, I'll just turn this into this thing, or I'll describe it like this.
Well, there's an advantage to rule sets that are lower in crunch. It allows, I think, for more immersion. And I think that's why there's an appeal in like old school gaming. What do people want to generally play? They want to play, clones or simulacrums of the original rules, or basic. Maybe AD&D 1E with Odric is there for publishers, but players, even me, I was a 1E player. I came in with 1E, but I like to play Swords and Wizardry because I can play that game without referring to the books.
Right.
Once the rules fade to the back, you get this sense of immersion. It's like going to see a good movie or reading a good book. You forget the process that's getting you to I hate to say the word, and with role playing games, because it has connotations for some people, get into the story. But our RPGs are telling an experience, and if the rules come away, it almost feels on some level like the memories are a real memory. I think the crunchy of the rules, you kind of lose out on that ability to immerse yourself to some extent, especially unless the DM is handling all the rules behind the scenes, and then that's just way too much work.
Yeah, and I think it's an apt comparison to a lot of other creative endeavors. Like watching a movie, you can say, like, well, that movie has beautiful cinematography, but did you really think about that while you were watching the movie? There was a craft that went into making that shot that beautiful. You just enjoyed it in the moment. And then you maybe, but if you're critiquing it, maybe then you're spending more time looking at that stuff. And thinking about, like, okay, this actor's performance, this direction, this editing, this cinematography, whatever. But if you're kind of in the moment of enjoying the story, I think that with movies, TV, with telling a story in a role playing game, it's the similar way. Like a lot of that stuff can kind of fade into the background, and you get caught up in the story.
Yeah, I mean. I changed the banners by clicking on the wrong button.
Oops.
But oops. No insult to Tom Wilson, but you were already here, so go fuck yourself, Tom. Love
Whoa.
I know Tom. I know Tom.
Understood.
Well. Hey, I'm a special guest at ShireCon, so if I can tell the person that runs ShireCon to go screw and go pound sand, it's out of love. David Thompson's in the room. David, nice to see you. So now, we talked about this briefly before we went on air, and before we go into the details of your actual project this time, I felt that this, to me, it's important. I think it really stands out. You actually have a proof copy of the finished product. And,
I do.
For those watching at home, for those listening at home, he's holding up a soft cover of Low Stakes. It's a nice size soft cover booklet, digest size. It is a rarity to literally see something like that for a Kickstarter that is currently funding. I mean, so if you're going to back this Kickstarter, you know the work has been done to write it, to get the art, to lay it out, to proofread it. And you're not going to be waiting forever to get your product. So now that we've established that you are literally low to no risk when it comes to your project, tell us a bit about your project.
Sure. The game's called Low Stakes. Like you said, it's just a little zine game. It's 36 pages long, grand total. Small book, and it emulates sort of the movie and TV show What We Do in the Shadows, which is to say the characters are playing vampires, werewolves, ghosts, mystics, or maybe even a human, who are all sharing a house together in the modern day. And there's the train. And
I live near the Long Island Railroad. We just don't get the whistle.
They're sharing a house in the modern day, and they're just not very good at it. And you get into kind of sitcom style shenanigans with each other and with situations that come up and NPCs and storylines and so forth. So it plays very, you can play an episode very quick. You can play a game session in like maybe only an hour. It could run a little longer if you had more players or if you really get into role playing. The rules are very light. It's all GM-less. So everybody's portraying a character, and there's a structure that's built into kind of sort of help to emulate a sitcom episode where you've got a basic premise that the characters are thrust into, and then there's information for scenes that are like, might pop up in an episode like that. You don't have to use all of them, but there's some ones that are real basic, and then there are ones that kind of escalate things more and more, and like things can get more out of hand until you get to the point where you resolve the story and kind of wrap it up.
So I'm assuming that this is a genre, as far as movies and TV, that really appeals to you, because something like that, you know, generally, if you're taking inspiration from something, it struck a note in you. So what note did this strike for you?
Well, the show in particular, I enjoyed the movie, but the show in particular, first of all, I'm a fan of horror, and then I particularly enjoy a good horror comedy. And the show is decidedly a situation comedy type show. It is a comedy, but it has, that strong horror element because there are characters that are, in the show, most of the main characters are vampires. So it satirizes not only certain elements of sitcoms, but also satirizes like vampire fiction in general, and horror fiction in some respects as well, because they do kind of hit on, like, they make fun of, like, werewolf tropes and like, mystical wizard tropes and ghosts and things like that too. So just, I thought building like a real simple, short, sweet kind of game around generating that and just letting everybody play a character and have fun and create, funny moments using the fiction that we all kind of know about horror, gothic type horror monsters, vampires and the like. Just, everybody kind of knows that stuff. I don't have to teach that to you. Like, it doesn't have to be part of the description in the book. If this is a game that appeals to you, that you're going to back and want to play, it's because vampire lore, at least to some extent. You know enough to be able to have fun with it.
Right. Garlic, steaks, mirrors, sunlight, must sleep in a coffin. All the stuff we've learned from
and all the modern and all the
movies,
all the variations, too. The twinkly vampires from Twilight, and daywalkers from Blade, and like the show plays on those things as well. There are moments in the show where it gets very meta, and they're very aware that they're talking about different vampire fiction from more contemporary sources. And so, there's nothing that says you can't weave that into these stories as well. It's not strictly, Transylvanian blah vampires.
Well, you can
unless that's what you want. And if that's what you want nothing but counts and countesses, capes and medals, go for it.
That reminds me of what the old Second City television skits with the vampire.
Yeah.
I forget who played the role, but it was suitably campy. But now, is this your first Kickstarter?
No, this is my 10th.
So you've got a proven track record.
I like to think so, yeah. This is one of the smaller ones that I've done. I've done larger games and supplements for those games, and yeah, but this was a small one, and that's one of the reasons that this little book exists at this point, is because I know my way around Kickstarter. I was confident that I could go ahead and just spend the money to get the artwork and the editing done. I laid it out myself, and then run a Kickstarter that I could recoup that from. And it's a bit of a gamble, but I was confident that it would work out okay.
Well, that's a gamble that you can make it based upon your prior record of success. I mean, for a lot, I think probably there's now if you've listened to me talk about zines and zines, I'm a New Yorker. I'm sure it's part of the reason why I look at it and go, Zine, it must be Zine. But when it comes to these zines, we discussed this, so many people producing zines for this round of ZineQuest. And a lot of them are literally going to be first timers, but at least we have a community over on the Facebook side with the RPG zines that people can ask questions and get honest answers. I mean, that's something that I don't think people maybe outside of creating games understands that it isn't a zero-sum corner of the universe. People don't withhold information because, if I tell so-and-so how to find a good printer, it's going to cost me sales. I think it is literally a community that prefers to help each other than to watch people sink on their own.
Yeah, the RPG zine community I've just seen in general, like they've seen a resurgence in this sort of a product over the past several years, and because they are small and because so many people are kind of learning as they go, and then you've got some people in there that are sort of experts. They've done it before, maybe back in the day, or maybe they've just gotten done a few now, and they share it around. Like especially if my game is about one thing and your game is about something else, there is the possibility that there's going to be a backer out there that's going to look at both and they're going to have to choose because they just don't have $6 to spend on both. But a lot of times, like, you're not really that much in competition unless you have two ideas that are very, very similar. People are going to gravitate to the types of the games that they like. And so if you put together a game where there's an audience for it, there's people out there that are going to dig that, then you're going to be able to find it. And with ZineQuest being in its third year, I think one of the reasons that Low Stakes is doing well and that some of these other ones are doing very well is that the backers who love these zines know it's coming. They plan for February. They know, okay, I'm going to have $100 set aside because I'm going to buy 10 zines.
I budgeted $250 and that's done. That's I'm like, wow, we are on the 6th of the month. I've already backed. This is all I know. ZineQuest might put me over 500 projects backed as a super backer because I'm probably going to be backing at. I think I'm already at. Well over a dozen, and it's only because I had my finger was getting it hurt having hit the pointer so many times, clicking on there's another one, maybe it's almost like an addiction, but. Personally for me, especially when it comes to zines, getting a zine in the mail is almost like a mini Christmas because because it comes in an envelope. You get to rip the envelope open, and you get to read unique product, and it isn't product that's being mass produced. It's not like it's going to be out there for, generally speaking, thousands or tens of thousands of readers to read, unless you're backing Phil Reed stuff. Phil has found the secret to huge participation from his backers. But generally speaking, zines seem to be very intimate little gifts, and I think that's a lot of the appeal to them.
I think too. The great thing about getting that zine when it shows up for you, you said there's the Christmas aspect to it, but it's a small product. It's something that's easily digestible, easily consumable. So you can get that on the day. And if you've got a half hour to spare, you can sit down and consume that thing. You can enjoy it immediately. It's not like you're getting a 300-page book where it's okay, this is going to take some time to dedicate and really get through. So I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to flip through and look at the pretty artwork now. And then I'm going to set it aside and I'm going to set, a half a day on the weekend to sit down and plow through 6 hours of reading. But with a zine, you can just sit down and kind of just it's like an immediate little endorphin of just enjoying this cool little game all of a sudden when and it doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah, before I got married 9 years ago, I used to always have my recent zine collection was always in the bathroom. It was figured that was perfect time and perfect amount of reading material. I no longer have that because long discussion, and the short of it is I lost, and I can't argue the point as to why I lost. But yes. And I'll take it. And storing your zines in the bathroom when you take showers and the pages get all warped, probably not good. But I mean, I've been following zines in the RPG community, not magazines, but zines, since Christian Walker used to be putting out things like Scrollworks back in the aughts, around the turn of the century. And there's always just something very special about getting, again, knowing that, all right, maybe there's 100 or so copies of this out there, and I got one of them. And this material, then, if I use it in a campaign, it is likely that others in my gaming group aren't going to have it, And there's something very special about that. Now, did I put together a zine? Yes, it's in PDF. Torchlight, one issue. Thank God I have a really great layout person in Jeff Jones, because it wouldn't have happened without him. Because I've laid out one product, and that was Swords and Wizardry Continual Light. And the best compliment I've gotten on it was, it's serviceable. And when somebody calls your layout serviceable, it means, all right, I didn't fuck anything up too much, but okay, I'll accept that. So layout is it's not my specialty. It's not my corner of the universe. It's not one of my skill sets. I guess if we were playing third edition, I couldn't take 20. I don't know. I really skipped over third edition. My gaming ended at the end of 2E, and I came back, I don't know, a dozen years ago, playing Castles and Crusades, going, wow, these rules kind of feel like the old rules, but not quite. But they're cool, and they're in print. And that's something else that I think is important. Like right now, Torchlight isn't in print. And I think there's a huge part of the tangibility about getting these zines. I know that when it comes to, like, on drive-thru, there are certain zines, usually ones that are based on giving you adventures, that I'm happy to get in PDF, because I like to write in the adventure material I have. So I'll get it in PDF and I'll print it out. But if it's about a general purpose with articles about magic items or it's a new rule set, I want it in print. There's something about the tangibility of flipping through those pages that I need, and I think that's why my budgeting of $250 was just much too low. So I'm going to have to steal from Peter to pay Paul, and see. Yeah, see, I guess, well, we're in the midst of the pandemic. Who goes out to eat anyway? I mean, the money that I would normally spend on a couple of dinners outside, like Valentine's Day, that money I would have spent on dinner can go to zines. Just don't tell my wife I said that. I'll make dinner. It'll be a lot cheaper, and she won't know that I saved like $80 that I spent on another 5 or 6 zines for people in the community. Wow. But,
well, it's the physical product for the zine thing is nice, because there's an economy of scale for printing stuff, and a small product that's like only 20, 30, 40 pages, like these small books, is reasonable as far as like doing a print on demand and doing a small, keeping the cost to the backer and the consumer down, and still being able to do like a little printed thing that's only going to cost you a few bucks to print.
Right.
So, there's if you talk to RPG designers who do larger Kickstarters, and there comes a point where, it's like, okay, well, do I just keep this PDF? Do I do PDF with print on demand through like Drive-Thru RPG or something like that? Or, maybe what if this thing does really well and I can like do a legitimate print run, but now that opens up issues of where you store the extra copies and how you get,
yes.
how you get rid of them and sell them and whatnot. And are you interested in dealing with those challenges? Like a zine thing, you can, print your little book for $2-3.
Yeah. Oh, you're right.
Per unit.
The storage thing is one of it. Print on demand. I truly, I remember when Drive-Thru started offering print on demand, and as a reviewer, they gave me the option to get, I think it was two products. It was early reprints of some of the classic D&D stuff. I think they were offering in print to see the quality of the print on demand. And they were soft covers, and I was impressed. It was actually pretty nice. And I think we now, years later, we take this for granted that print on demand is available now. The recent brouhaha in our corner of the universe was Drive-Thru was no longer going to order Saddle Stitch. I've heard from many publishers their frustrations on that, because a lot of them publish zine-sized books where they like the saddle stitch because it opens up nice and flat, and Perfect Bound doesn't necessarily offer that ability.
Right.
But we've tried to figure out the economics of it. My assumption is that Lightning Source, the distributor, probably has a saddle stitch machine that needs replacing or major fixing, and just economically they figured we're the only POD publisher being used by drive-through. So if we stop offering a format and substitute another format, no harm, no foul, at least on their end. So I suspect that's what's going on. No behind the scenes knowledge.
Yeah, and it's entirely likely that they don't make a great deal off of the volume that they do. Even though those products are really nice, because PDFs do still dominate quite a bit with a lot of people. And there are other options out there. If you're just doing like a one-shot Kickstarter where you're just going to put the thing out, you're not going to necessarily put it up for sale later. There are other printers out there that will still do saddle stitch stuff, and you just have to deal with the shipping.
Right.
So you might have to suck it up and spend the time with the shipping, or find a fulfiller that'll do the shipping, kind of close to what Drive-Thru RPG might normally be able to offer, as best you can. And then, if you want to put it up on Drive-Thru after the fact and it's going to be perfect bound, then, it's not the end of the world. You still got that,
right, that
initial run of like, okay, here's your staple bounders or saddle stitch, products.
Right. And
we're kind of expecting that.
And as you've said, pretty much, so if you're able to offer print on demand as opposed to having buy in bulk, you don't put yourself in the myth and magic category of a funded Kickstarter where the boxes of the game filled up the publisher's living room, and the vast majority of backers never got a copy because it was too expensive to ship, because it took them so long to fulfill. Shipping costs went up, and that's one of the advantages you have with Drive-Thru. You can set it up that shipping cost is separate from the cost of what you're backing for. You don't have these additional expenses, and you don't have to store it. It's not sitting in your living room or your garage or your barn or wherever you're going to put this. It's on demand. You're not going to be stuck with overstock, which a lot of people don't see ahead of time as a potential cost.
So. Little bit of advice, personal advice from somebody who's done a few Kickstarters to anybody who's going to produce anything that where they're going to handle the shipping of the product, is you charge a little more for the shipping.
It's going to go up
than what it is, because especially if you think you're going to take a little while to get the product together, because something about the shipping could go up even with Drive-Thru RPG. Like their small book shipping has been like $5 forever, but it's going to go to $5.50 or $6 one of these days. It's just a matter of time. So you just have to put it in there and say, you know what, I'm gonna charge $6 for the shipping so that I don't get my ass handed to me all of a sudden by an additional $1 on shipping on 400 copies.
Yeah, I mean, that can make or break your budget. And something else that folks don't realize is that, or at least they don't, it's like, oh, I raised $10,000 on Kickstarter. No, you didn't. Yes, $10,000.
You raised about $2,000. You walk away with a couple thousand, depending on what your costs. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kickstarter takes their share, and I believe that they also charge you whatever the payment processor's share was of the transaction.
Plan to lose 10%.
Right, and then which part that folks often forget, especially here in the States, is you better, your expenses, document them all, because you're going to get taxed on that money. And the way you're going to, pay less taxes is by showing your expenses, and the actual, what was your net and what was your gross are going to be two different things. You don't want to get taxed on the larger of the two. So people, it's good to see somebody who's gone through the process numerous times. And again, like I said, when you showed me before the show that you had the proof copy in hand, I was like in Kickstarter heaven because
he did a dance. You should have seen. It was like he got up and he danced around, and he whooped a few times. It was pretty spectacular.
I don't do the whoop shit anymore, but it was listen, it was exciting to me because you just don't see it, and it's nice to see. Not only does it mean that you have confidence in your product, but you have confidence in yourself that you were able to do this. And it's not even the funny. You had a proof copy, I'm assuming, before the Kickstarter even went live.
I got my proof copy just barely into the Kickstarter because the original plan I was going to do in the video, I was going to show like, hey, it's done in the Kickstarter video, and I ended up doing something different with the video, which nobody watches anyway. So, I've seen my video viewership go down lower and lower with the, I don't know, like there are really pretty videos that some people will do and they watch, and there's, great animations and all this stuff. But, and I understand that there are some people that will look at a page and say, no video, they're not taking this seriously, I'm not backing them. But I also look at my numbers for viewership of the video, and I'm like, wow, nobody watches this, relatively speaking.
It's funny because I think about videos, and I've talked with a lot of Kickstarter publishers, and I've had peeks behind the scenes on many projects. And I think when it comes to videos, if you're going to do a video, it's got to be, it's got to be for your really high-end project, and it's got to be spot on awesome. If you're going to do a video, and I say this only because I watched it, and I can't scrub it out of my eyes. When you do a video with yourself sitting on your couch in your dirty white socks up on the coffee table, and they literally, like when your white socks are turning gray on the soles, and you're talking about your, ripoff of laser tag, that is not a video. You would have been better off with a still graphic and nothing else, because that I watched it multiple times just because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And as a blogger, I will say I do appreciate projects that, even with the video, still give a cover image or a splash image, because it's really hard to get an image for your blog post from a rolling video. Some people just put the video up, and it's like, I got to now play the video and try to take a screenshot of the moving video at the right spot to get an image that will reflect what I want on the blog side, as opposed to just some random image that's not going to make much sense out of context. So I do appreciate projects like yours, which is it's just like, I can see, I know what's going on. This is awesome. And I got an image I can work with. This is awesome. I'll tell you the truth, though, with ZineQuest, there's so many zines out there, I'm not watching the videos. And I think that's probably what it's kind of like, well, there's 3 dozen Kickstarters I want to look at today, and there's 2 dozen videos, and through the videos, I can read the text faster than I can check a video. When I'm doing my normal once a week Kickstarter shopping, and you do your search in Kickstarter for RPGs, and then I watch the videos, because how many new ones pop up? Half dozen, maybe a dozen that you're interested in. But when you're literally trying to look at 2 to 3 dozen every other day, the videos don't do.
Yeah.
But it's exciting. ZineQuest is an exciting time, and I hope it really leads to a nice resurgence to zines. I think it has. The last 2 seasons of this, the last 2 years of ZineQuest, I think, have led to more zines hitting the market, whether it's on drive-thru or itch.io or other ways that people are now grabbing it and consuming it. And I think it's great. I think that in a lot of ways, that is what used to be shared on forums, and forums seem to be falling to the wayside. I think that in a way, zines are a way going forward, as well as a step back to nostalgia, and I like that.
Yeah,
I'm guilty.
That's okay.
What can I say? Well, I mean, dude, Craig, thank you very much, man. This is a good way to start my morning. And it was, and again, can't stress this enough. If you're listening at home, he's got the proof copy, right? You're not going to be waiting on layout. You're not going to be waiting on artists. He's not going to tell you 6 months from now that shipping went up, a buck, and he's not going to put out the tin cup asking for a little assistance.
Here's the challenge to the backers. I've already decided this will fulfill when the funds clear from the Kickstarter, or when everybody's card clears, whichever comes first. I will ship this thing out before I get the money because I can afford to do the shipping. But I want to do it all in one print, so I want to make sure that everybody's credit card clears and goes through, because you always end up with a few people that, not always, but you often end up with a few people that their card blows up or something doesn't happen, and they end up not getting it in the end.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're overdrawn or it's a late payment. It could be something as simple as, well, when you pledged, your card had a valid date, but now it's the next month, and your card expired last month.
Yeah,
you didn't update it, so now.
Yep.
So
challenge to the backers. If they all clear before, I'll go ahead and fulfill even earlier. Spot
on. Well, folks, now remember with the shipping, we are in a world of pandemic. I know it's weird. I get some stuff that like ships and comes across the country in days, and other stuff will take 2 weeks. I don't know where it's getting stuck at, but it seems to be a sign of the ongoing pandemic, or maybe just the postal service sucks. I can't say one truthfully or the other, but use your common sense. Do you always say that your character would never throw a fireball into a 10 by 10 room and kill the whole party? Well, guess what? When it comes to being in this world of COVID, your common sense is the best defense for you and your loved ones. I'm not going to tell you what to do. We're all adults, or theoretically, according to my statistics, and I look at the analytics for this stuff, we're all adults. There aren't too many children under the age of 14 listening to my F-bombs, and if they are, well, you know what? Go ahead, tell your mother that Tenkar taught you how to curse. Be safe, be well, God bless for all those dice. And I'll be back with another Fireside Chat tomorrow with actually my layout artist on Torchlight, Jeff Jones. That's at 2 p.m. Eastern. All right, folks. Thank you much. Later.
Thank you. Bye.